We're going to cry macho in some natural light, and we're going to die at 20 on Mothering Sunday. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Becks Perfect, and this is Offscreen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Welcome to Offscreen. Let's keep things cinematic. I'm Becks Perfect, and with me is the wonderful Van Connor, and we are doing things properly from across the pond today because we are filming for both the US and the UK, and I am very excited to be able to bring this episode to you in full global fashion. So we're going to kick off with a movie today, which... Well, I think we've got to hark back a little bit to last week in a way. We did watch The Marksman last week with Liam Neeson, and you commented that it was kind of a Poundland Clint Eastwood film. Well, this week we have a Clint Eastwood film called Cry Macho, and it is the story of a washed-up rodeo star, one-time rodeo star. He's now a horse breeder, and basically he crosses the border to Mexico to try and bring back a friend's son. And let's just say it's a road trip that isn't as simple as he'd originally hoped.
Back when we had winners, I was afraid to lose you to the competition. 5 times you won the All-American. That was a long time ago, wasn't it? That was before the accident. Before the booze. You know how many people told me to just cut you loose? You gonna say anything?
Howard, I've always thought of you as a small, weak, and gutless man. But you know, there's no reason to be rude.
So, funny story about this one. This has a very strange place in my personal cinematic history in terms of the people I love to follow in films. This is the movie that Arnold Schwarzenegger was working on when it came out 10 years ago that he'd knocked up the housekeeper and his marriage fell apart. This is what Schwarzenegger was doing at the time. They had to drop the movie. But before that, about 23 years before that, this was pitched to Clint Eastwood, who turned it down to go and make one of the Dirty Harry sequels instead. I think it might have been the very last one, and he's now come back to it 3 decades later, and there's some sort of personal fulfillment thing for Eastwood on this. He feels attached to the material. It began life as an attempted film script by N. Richard Nash, who tried twice to pitch it, didn't get anywhere, then turned it into a novel, and then somehow managed to sell the film rights to the novel to the same studios that turned him down for a film project to begin with. So this thing comes with all sorts of baggage attached to it. And then you get to the film, and you can't really see what the fuss was all about, because it's a bit basic. Like we said last week that The Marksman was like a Poundland Clint Eastwood movie. This kind of feels like a B&M Liam Neeson movie. It's very, very strange.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And it's kind of like, you know, it's a middle of the road 3-star kind of film. And, you know, after all of that kind of, you know, pain and suffering to get this to the big screen, God, I'd be crying macho at that as well. But the thing is that, you know, I immediately watched it, and I said to you before we came on air, I said we should go all in on this because the comparison between this and The Marksman is almost unparalleled. It's ridiculous. And I was like, I've seen this movie before. In fact, I've seen it very, very clearly last week. This is the same movie.
The weirder thing as well is I think the last time we saw Clint Eastwood on screen, and I didn't get to review it, I think I was away, I might have been in New York or something at the time, was The Mule, if you remember, in which again it was Clint Eastwood as the nonagenarian crossing the border, dealing with, and you're thinking, okay, we've got a very specific remit going on with these older dramatic action stars, but okay, it's nice to see Eastwood's still got it and all, like, you know, hats off to him. You know, I think this is the first time he gets on horseback, I think since Unforgiven in 93. Wow. So, you know, there's like 20 odd years there, he's still got that ability, and it's nice to see, you know, him deliver that grizzle that no one else necessarily can. But let's be honest for a second, the crowd that's turning up for a Clint Eastwood movie in 2021 are not seeing this on theatrical. Like, this is, like, get this on digital, they stand at chat. They are not turning up to a cinema during a pandemic, not even at this stage. And they're really the only ones you can sell an Eastwood movie to. You get the odd ones like Gran Torino that have crossover appeal. This does not have that mainstream appeal of something like Gran Torino. The problem is, as well, The script simply lacks heart. It doesn't have the feeling and it doesn't have the emotion. Despite the title, it won't make you cry, and it's not especially macho because there is just none of that raw power and emotion behind it. Like you say, middle of the road, fine, 3 stars. But,
it just kind of plods along, and that's the thing. And I couldn't help but going, oh my goodness, Clint Eastwood really is that old. I mean, all power to him, but he's looking old in this movie, and he plays an old guy really well. But don't get me wrong, but it's like, is that enough to pull you into the cinema? I'm totally with you. No, it isn't. So cry macho, but do it at home is what I'd say. Wait for it to come out.
Sub privately and semi-masculinely. How about that?
Nobody needs to see you crying macho anywhere else over this movie. So that's our first movie of today. And you know what? Why not kick off with a Clint Eastwood movie? Because that's always a good way to start things off. What have we got coming up next?
So, Natural Light, it's the Curzon movie of the week. You know I look forward to a good Curzon flick. Because you never know what they are. They're nearly always pretty good. And actually, one of the reasons I've paired Cry Macho and Natural Light together in our sort of running order is there is something of a through line with that lack of emotion. However, in the case of Natural Light, it's almost a strength. It's almost why it works. So, this is a Hungarian movie. Could not be more different from all-American Clint Eastwood, obviously. We forgot to mention, by the way, that Clint Eastwood movie is set in 1979, which is about the biggest twist I could think on that one. This is the feature directorial debut of Denis Nagy, Hungarian filmmaker who has made, and I didn't really know this kind of story. It is a World War II story about the Hungarian military who were tasked with, I think it's between 1941-44, are tasked with patrolling Soviet-occupied territory and basically dispelling the local insurgents, who they know as partisans. And it's all shown through the eyes of one specific soldier. Now, this is based loosely, I think it's on a portion of a novel that is, and I'm going to have to forgive my pronunciation here, it is Termazetas Feini, I think is the name. And it's it's all foreign language, so we've not got a clip, obviously, because we'd have a much broader audience if we could include those clips, I admit, but, you know, such is the magic of radio, we can't include subtitles, and it would work terribly if it was dubbed. I don't do that, I've seen The Raid. But if you've ever seen the dubbed version of The Raid, absolute crime against cinema. But
I wouldn't do that.
This is a very bleak, drenched in greys and browns, very grisly, very wet, you feel the cold and the chill. It's one of those where the cinematographer must have had his work cut out for him because 90% of this is shot through, you know, breathy exhales in cold air kind of a vibe. It is bleak and
broody.
somber.
Bleak and broody?
Yeah. There's no light, there's no levity, the humanity, strangely, is gone from it. This is about the harshness of service in the time of war. It's about giving you that angle and that perspective that you frankly just wouldn't see anywhere else. You'd watch it and you wouldn't be bored, but you would. It's one of those kind of like Spencer that you watch and you think, what was the plot of this, actually? Other than just capture a feeling in a moment. There's nothing really... This is not a movie for plots. This is about, you know, the lack of humanity. This is about the lack of emotion. This is about the lack of... It's about just the absolute, you know, soul-crushing depths to which people were forced to serve at that point. I dug it, and I loved the style of it, the cinematography of it. I thought it was great. Like I say, 90% of it shot through, you know, cold, breathy exhales in the winter air. And it's one of those films that does make you just despair for what humanity must have been like a century ago, if you know what I mean.
Do you think they're maybe over-egging the pudding? It all sounds very uninviting, should I say. Are they going overboard on this bleakness?
I mean, to be honest, the fact that it is a Curzon film tells you that it's a Hungarian film being distributed by Curzon. You're like, okay, you know what? This is in the exact right place this needs to be to find its audience. Like the kind of crowd that are either going to watch this on that Curzon home plate or are going to merrily pop down to Curzon Soho or the Curzon Bank Street in Sheffield kind of thing. You know, that the crowd that are going to go to the art house mini multiplex are exactly the kind of crowd that I think will find what's there to be appreciated in this. And hats off to them. I think it's a very, very good film. And for a feature debut as well, astonishing. Like, if this is someone's first feature-length film, that is breathtaking.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm intrigued by this. I'm not going to say I'm going to rush out to see it. It sounds too bleak for me. But, I think capturing that moment in time, if you want to kind of know about the sentiment of that particular period, then maybe this is one for you. I'm sure for all the reasons of it being a Curzon movie, it's not one that the masses are going to go and rush to. But, if you're into that kind of stuff, this sounds like it might be something worth checking out.
Don't watch it for a good time. Watch it for an effective time.
Welcome back to Off Screen. We're keeping you cinematic, and we've got more movies on the big screen coming up for you right now. Kicking off with Mothering Sunday. It's not that time of year. We've just got a movie coming out called that. And it is a movie that I can only describe as being set in the 20s and featuring a lot of Josh O'Connor's bottom. And the rest of him, but mainly his bottom. But what we're seeing here is a movie about a maid who works for a very upper-class family, who the family house is run by Colin Firth and Olivia Colman. She's in love with another upper-class family's son who is destined to be married to another woman and is having his little bit on the side.
Good morning, Beechwood House.
Jay, is that you?
Yes, madam.
The show will be leaving here for this picnic. I'll be on my own, 11 o'clock, not the back past Jay front door.
I'm terribly sorry, madam, but you have the wrong number.
Hot. So I saw this with Zara Phelan this past week. They sent me the screening link through, and Zara and I sat and watched this, and so that we could both review it in one go. And well, I'm glad that I had a friend to watch this with, because it was an ordeal. First and foremost, you said about you see a lot of Josh O'Connor's bottom, and I said and the rest of him. And I do mean and the rest of him, because there are prolonged sequences in this movie that are just literally Josh O'Connor and Odessa Young just stood around in their birthday suits, just having conversations, not particularly engaging conversations, well-acted conversations, of course, but not particularly interesting or engaging conversations. Good Lord, this is a slog. This is one of the dullest movies I've seen in a year. And you understand how they've gotten the talent roster on this, because it's one of those movies that with one name you know how they've gotten the next. So you figure that they went to Colin Firth, for instance, and said, okay, we're going to adapt a Graham Swift novel. It's going to be really artsy and a period piece. Do you want to come and do it? And he said yes. And then they went to Olivia Colman, and she said, we're doing a Colin Firth period piece adaptation of a Graham Swift novel. And she said, of course, yes. And then they went to Odessa Young and Josh O'Connor and said, we've got a movie with Colin Firth and Olivia Colman in, and it's a period piece adaptation of a Graham Swift novel. And they said, are you kidding? Oh my God, yes. And then, well, let's just say the film does in no way measure up to what I would imagine the excitable appeal of that concept was. Good. I mean, it's just, wow.
Well, it is. You've described it. You've described it as Josh O'Connor and Odessa Young just talking in their birthday suits, and that is what this film is. Right, so I did this experiment after I watched it. I did this experiment because I went in going, oh, it's Downton Abbey the movie again. Like, that's what I was hoping it would be, right? And when I after I watched the movie, I went back and I randomly skipped to different parts all the way through. Yeah. And it was the same scene, whether it was 10 minutes in, 20 minutes in, 30 minutes in, an hour in. It's the same room, it's the same conversation, and it's like on repeat. And it's kind of, that is what this movie is. It's just the same point laboured again and again. It's like, we get it. He's not going to leave his wife to be with the maid, because that's not what happened in those times. Okay, you could have told us this in 15 minutes and we could have got the rest of that time back in our lives. It is an absolute slog. I'm with you. It looks gorgeous. I thought the costumes were amazing. Yeah. I thought, I quite like a pair of those glasses. They look really cool and on trend. But that was all I took away from it, really. Like, that was about it. And what a waste of such amazing talent. It's such a slog.
Yeah.
Ugh, let's just not even waste any more time on it.
Oh, I mean, I will say this: when you just said that, I did an experiment. My immediate response is, "What did you like? Order a pizza and wait around for it in your birthday suit? Like, how did you run an experiment on this movie?" I'm glad it went. I'm glad it went the way it did. I'm glad it went the way it did. Some poor Papa John's driver just didn't have the night of his life as a result of it. And what we just said,
that's on the next movie experiment.
Yeah, that was more entertaining than anything you'll find in Mothering Sunday. Just saying that out loud.
Oh, God.
So this is what I wouldn't even recommend this to like the grandparents. I mean, they're kind of selling this on. Oh, it's a Crown reunion between Olivia Colman and Josh O'Connor. You're like, no, just go and watch those episodes of The Crown again. Just trust me.
But do you know what? But also, right, if he's supposed to be this like young, hot, studly like guy that we're thinking she's desperate to be with, all I could see in this movie is Prince Charles. Is him playing Prince Charles. That's basically what it's doing. And I was like, it's nothing more off-putting.
I have my own issues with Josh O'Connor anyway. No matter what Josh O'Connor is in, and first of all, whenever I say his name, I always think of the comedian Tom O'Connor, as per the famous Stuart Lee stand-up piece. Shout out to Chris Wilson, my boy there. But Josh O'Connor, to me, just always seems like a performer who, no matter what he's appearing in, no matter what performance he's delivering, is permanently wearing the facial expression of someone who knows a fart has been let loose in the room and he doesn't know who to blame. That's permanently his face in any given moment. And the fact that this is meant to be like an erotic drama at points makes that incredibly difficult, because you've got this guy just stood around swinging in the wind, on full display, wearing the face of someone who is wondering, right, okay, who let it rip? Come on, who was it? Stand up. Was it you? Lighting man, was it you? And it's very disconcerting.
And note to everyone, just because you're going to get actors naked does not necessarily mean it's going to be erotic. It doesn't work like that. There has to be chemistry, not long pauses. These pauses in here last longer than Made in Chelsea. It's ridiculous. There's so much that I think, there's so much not going for this movie. So avoid at all costs, I think. It is not even going to be something that you'll want to give to your mother on Mothering Sunday. Let's put it that way. Should we move swiftly on?
I would. No, you give your mother this on Mothering Sunday. You are sending a message, and it ain't a positive one. Let's move on then to something a bit more upbeat. You Will Die at 20, which I promise I'm being ironic. It's not at all. This is another feature film debut. This is director Amjad Abu Alala, is a Dubai-based filmmaker who has made this. He's Sudanese born, but he's himself based in the UAE now. It is set in the Sudan, and this became the first ever Sudanese submission for the Oscars, would you believe? Like, ever. They had never submitted a movie to the Oscars before until this. And I can sort of see why, actually. It's quite, this is a movie that you'd see, go, oh yeah, we'll submit that. This seems like it'd garner a statue. It didn't, obviously. But it stars, I'm trying to remember his name here, Mustafa Shahata and his name is Muzamil. Now, Muzamil, when he is born in a Sudanese village, his mother takes him as a baby to, the local, I think it's a local sheikh, I think his name is, the local religious figurehead, who, and they try to predict the child's life through the ceremony, and one of the chanting members of the clergy, as it were, there stops counting at a specific point, which means that there is a prophecy that he will die at 20, and this then affects the next 20 years of his life. We jump forward to not long before he is 20, and he's not really getting to live his life. This is all Sudanese, subtitled. He's living a life of disappointment and restraint because he, as far as he's concerned, as far as his mother and his family are concerned, there is no point to him doing anything. He's just going to die at 20. His father has moved away because he can't deal with the heartbreak of this, and he befriends a member of the village who has been away for a long time, seen the outside world, and comes back, and who introduces him to the magic of cinema. And through this, he starts to discover there's actually more. It's worth noting, it's not like he came back. This is not like the story of Saudi Arabia, where they got shown the Emoji Movie and thought, oh, well, okay, it turns out you can do movies again. He gets shown the work of Youssef Shaheen. So it's a very specific kind of world cinema that he's getting shown here. Really great movie in a very surprising way. It's just about this. You know me, I love a drama that's about the crass pointlessness of religion, the sheer pointlessness of religious, idolatry and idealism, and the fact that it's cinema as well in there. I kind of found something of an emotional thing to cling on to. I thought this was really great. I thought this was a film, like
Fantastic.
I say, you can absolutely see why you'd watch it. But yeah, you know what? We've never submitted a movie for the Oscars before. Let's maybe give it a shot with this one, And you can absolutely understand it.
I'm glad you've said that, because I was getting a bit worried that this was all going downhill for going into the cinema this week. So it's quite a relief that we've got something good.
We've got Ghostbusters next week. We're good.
Okay, fine. Yeah. Oh, I'm really excited about that. I haven't caught the screening. I know you've already seen it. I'm excited to hear what you think about it. Yeah. Okay. So we've kind of got. If I could draw a graph for how these movies have gone this week, we've kind of gone like middle, slightly up, very down, and then back up again. And that's a good way to end. So listen, guys, do not panic. When we come back, we will bring you movies that you can rely on that are going to be on your telly box. So stay tuned.
And now it's time for a segment we like to call Off Screen Pays the Bills. Hey, Bex.
Hey, Van. What's going on?
Hey, nothing going on but the rent. You know how it is.
Oh, that I do. And you know what? The weekend's coming up. I'm thinking about maybe staying in, chilling out, staying cozy. What have you got for me? Is there something I can be doing?
Well, do you know what? Funnily enough, our sponsors this week have got you covered. They've got, actually, a very fun way to spend. I'm actually holding up the game in front of you. We are talking, of course, about Marvel's Dice Throne. So, Marvel's Dice Throne is, in fact, you might have heard of Dice Throne. So, there's Dice Throne's been around. It's a fun sort of dice-based board game. You select a bunch of heroes. In this case, this is a new Marvel edition. So, you traditionally pick from any of like 8 characters. In this case, you can pick from any of 8 Marvel characters to face off with other players on this game. You play against one another, and you basically see who gets the right to take the throne. So normally it's an old school throne. Now it is a special Marvel throne. And the way this works is you strategically roll your dice to earn different abilities and to earn different hero cards. And if you get different hero cards, you can get different power levels and upgrade your character and your hero. And believe it or not, I hadn't encountered the game prior to now, and I have been introduced to the wonderful world of Dice Throne. And I'm forever terrified that I'm now going to lose a significant chunk of my years of my prime to this game. So I'd like to thank our sponsors for that. And you can thank them yourself in the meanwhile by actually pre-ordering the Marvel Dice Throne game on Kickstarter, and you can find that by going to kickstarter.com. The full link is in the description for this episode, and that's Marvel Dice Throne, to which I will now be losing way more of my life. Thanks, guys.
Welcome back to Offscreen, and I did promise you some top movies on your telly box. So do not worry, stick with us. We've got 7 days worth of great movies for you to catch at your leisure. But we're going to kick off with your Saturday night, because who doesn't want to watch a great movie on a Saturday night? And wow, Van has already off air been telling me how great this one is, and that he absolutely had to swap out one of my picks for his. And just tell him why.
Okay, first of all, this is the 25th anniversary of this film. It was the very first time in a very fan-centric franchise that they attempted to lure in audiences from the outside, and it did a pretty good job. And it set an unrealistic expectation that this brand is still dealing with the fallout from today. It is Star Trek: First Contact from 1996. If you don't know this one, this is the first ever solo adventure on the big screen for the Next Generation crew. They had done Star Trek Generations, where they had some members of the original crew and they destroyed the Enterprise and Picard and all that. This time around, it's Picard, the Next Generation crew. They've got a brand new Enterprise. They're going up against the big bad guy of the series, the Borg, who they finally have the big feature film budget to actually do something scary with. So what you get is effectively Aliens. The movie Aliens, set in the Star Trek universe, but with all the mechanics of Back to the Future at the same time. So the idea is the bad guy aliens go back in time into our future, but Star Trek's past, to the year of 2063, when the first ever warp flight takes place. Funny story, this at one point was meant to involve Tom Hanks as Zephram Cochrane, the inventor of Warp Drive. He turned it down for scheduling reasons because he wanted to go and direct That Thing You Do, also for Paramount. Instead, they got James Cromwell, who had recently been Oscar nominated for Babe the Gallant Pig, to fill in. And you're going to hear him in our clip. He's fantastic. He's a big part of the mythology now. So you wind up with two stories. You have Commander Riker, Geordie LaForge, and Councillor Troy and all the engineers on planet Earth in 2063 trying to repair humanity's first ever warp rocket for reasons that I will explain in the clip. And on the other side, you have Picard and Data and Worf and Dr. Crusher and all the rest of them up on the ship with rifles, sleeves rolled up, sweaty brows, going toe-to-toe with these almost H.R. Giger-like space zombies.
It is one of the pivotal moments in human history, Doctor. You get to make first contact with an alien race. And after you do, everything begins to change.
Your theories on warp drive allow fleets of starships to be built, and mankind to start exploring the galaxy.
It unites humanity in a way that no one ever thought possible when they realize they're not alone in the universe. Poverty, disease, war, they'll all be gone within the next 50 years.
But unless you make that warp flight tomorrow morning, before 11:15, none of it will happen.
And you people, you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
I wish I was as geeky as you and into Star Trek, because I can see just how excited your little face is.
That's why you should watch it, though, because it's really good for that.
Fine, maybe. That's on Film 4, 2:35 p.m. on Saturday. I'm not, you know what, maybe I'll watch it just to see if Van's right. Maybe I won't, just out of spite. Who knows? Anyway, let's move swiftly on to something far more up my Strasser, which is... yeah, it is one of my... Well, actually, I'm going to say this. Whilst a lot of people slightly older than me and Van were watching The Princess Bride, I was watching this movie. And this movie, I will continue to watch this because I love it dearly. It's The Never-Ending Story on BBC One at 2:35 p.m. on Sunday. I mean, this is cinematic genius, people. Do not miss this movie. It's incredible. And it still holds up. It looks amazing with all the practical effects. Don't you agree?
I do. It's one of those seminal movies of growing up in the late 80s, I think, The Never-Ending Story. Because obviously, I think it come out like 84, but by the time it hits VHS and things like that, it's like 88, 89 kind of thing. Might be 86, I'm not sure. But the whole thing is, it takes its place in that pantheon. You mentioned The Princess Bride. There's also things like Labyrinth, Crystal Skull, things like that. These, you could package these movies together. They are sort of seminal works to millennials of a very specific age. So I think you and I are kind of easy pickings to that. Also, our next film kind of ties into that to an extent as well, but has the John Carpenter, Kurt Russell thing going for it. Go on, Bex.
This movie as well. So both of these movies I will watch quite happily on repeat all the time. They're brilliant. So the next one is Big Trouble in Little China, which is on Monday on the Paramount channel at 9 p.m. This is Kim Cattrall, Kurt Russell, as you mentioned. This is bonkers in New York, like Little China thing. It's got, like ninjas coming in with like lightning powers. It's got, like a woman who has green eyes, who is obviously seen as like the one that they need to sacrifice. And you've got this weird bearded Chinese man it's all about mythology and stuff, but it's got Kurt Russell, so it's bonkers and it's absolutely brilliant. And I cannot wait to watch this again. It's actually, for me, a perfect Monday movie, as is Never-Ending Story. Like 2:35 p.m. from Never-Ending Story. Get the kids involved. Like, show them what real kids' movies were actually like before animation took off in the way that like Pixar and stuff did. Like, this is like practical effects at its finest. And then Big Trouble in Little China. This is the teen in you that's kind of going, I want to watch this movie because it's kind of cool and it's kind of hot at the same time, but I'm probably not old enough to watch this. This is kind of like your Stranger Things kind of generation. The original kind of Stranger Things generation that finds that nostalgic. Will be watching this movie and loving it for that. So 2 great movies back to back on Sunday and Monday for you. Now, Tuesday, Van, I can only assume by the title of this you've chosen another horror, and it's every week you choose a horror to scare me. Is it not?
No. Oh, no. Okay, so ITV4, Tuesday night, 10 p.m, Sudden Death. This was Jean-Claude Van Damme's follow-up to Time Cop. This was him attempting to capitalise on this. This was Die Hard in a hockey arena, and he's the fireman who happens to be there with his kids, and it is spectacularly awful, but it's awful in a way that only Jean-Claude Van Damme could have pulled off in early 1996. let me give you a snippet of what we're dealing with here. This is him doing the calling in the cops and having to deal with it himself moment.
Have you had any contact with the aggressors?
I killed 2. Is that contact?
Look, one of them told me they're going to bring this whole building down.
What are you guys gonna do about it?
We're still evaluating the situation.
There's no situation. They want money.
A lot of it. Give it to him.
If you around and something happens to my kid,
We're considering every possible response.
if you're not gonna pay, say so. I'll get my daughter.
Do not try any kind of rescue. Do you understand me? You would jeopardize the lives of the vice president and everyone else in the arena. Believe me, we know what the hell we're doing. Our agents are entering the arena. You stay where you are. We are going to do this by the numbers.
Of course, there's an explosion.
Of course there is. How could there not be?
Exactly. And to be honest, it's such a, well, for me, that clip, just by hearing it, I mean, I'm sorry I called it a horror. By that clip, yeah, that sounds like every 90s movies mixed
totally.
into one, which is fantastic. Yeah. And actually, speaking of 90s movies, did you say that was 1996?
I think that was very early 96, like February maybe 96, yeah. At least in the UK.
Okay, then let's move back 1 year to 1995 for our next pick.
Whoa.
Because The Net is on telly on on Wednesday, and that's on at Great Movies at 6:45 p.m. Now this is Sandra Bullock, who is like a computer programmer who basically uncovers a conspiracy theory that comes out, and it puts her and the lives of everyone around her into danger. This is kind of like on a modern day thing. What is that one with Keira Knightley, the espionage one that she was in recently, where she is a whistleblower?
Oh God, you're testing me now. I can't remember the time. It was based on the true story, wasn't it? It was really good too.
Yeah, but this is kind of a similar sort of premise in that way. But it's kind of like, this is your 90s version of that. And of course, Sandra Bullock is brilliant as ever. We've got, who else is in it? Jeremy Northam's in it as well, and a few others that I think, it stuck with you. And I think, again, from that kind of late teen vibe for us, growing up in the 90s and stuff, like this is kind of the thing that we'd watch and go, that was a cool movie. That's something that we really enjoyed.
Well, this came out during a very brief love affair period that Hollywood had at the end of 95, early 96 with sort of cyber thrillers. There was this, Hackers, Lawnmower Man 2, Beyond Cyberspace. Hackers, funnily enough, is the Honest trailer this week. I thoroughly recommend that. But this has its fans. It's dorky, but it works.
Oh, I like it. I really like it. I haven't watched it in years, but I think it's worth a revisit because, yeah, you're right. It is dorky, but it worked. But it was dorky and cool because it was the 90s. Let's put it that way. Let's move on very swiftly then to another great movie from that era. Thursday, ITV4, 10:30 p.m. Van. This one's for you.
Another 90s one. This one also starring Sandra Bullock, this time as Officer Lenina Huxley, I believe. And this is like one of my favourite actioners of the early 90s. It's from 1993. I believe it's one of the only films directed by Marco Bramby. It might be his only one. Stars Sylvester Stallone and Wesley Snipes, height of their fame, respectively, as the tech and crim who get put into cryogenic storage in 1996 and wake up in 2032 San Angeles, which has become a very sanitized, politically correct society with no violence or crime. And so when the ultimate criminal is then defrosted, they have to defrost the ultimate cop to stop him. It is, of course, Demolition Man, and you can see this on ITV4, 10:30 on Thursday night. I can't recommend it highly enough. It is awesome.
I don't know if you guys know it, but you're out of toilet paper.
Did you say toilet paper?
Oh, they used handfuls of wadded paper back in the 20s.
I'm happy that you're happy, but the place where you're supposed to have the toilet paper, you got this little shelf with 3 seashells on it.
He doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells. I can see how that could be confusing.
I do love Demolition Man, and I'm going to definitely check it out again. So ITV4, 10:30 p.m. on Thursday. Van, see us off with Friday. Film for 9 o'clock, A Vigilante is the movie that we're seeing our weekends off with.
Do you remember this one? This is from about 3 years ago. It's Olivia Wilde as the avenging angel figure. She escapes an abusive marriage herself and then becomes the agent facilitator for other women in the same situation, often becoming violent and murderous. Like, she goes through the ringer on this one. This is a hard movie.
No, I haven't seen this.
Oh, this is good. You want to see this. This is brutal and hard, and it sort of just fell under the radar. And Olivia Wilde, absolutely terrific in it. Written and directed by, I think it's Sarah Dagar Nixon, who, I'm trying to remember what the film was that she gave us. Was it The Light? There might have been The Light Between Oceans, I think it was. But really solid, pulse-pounding thriller. This one I really cannot recommend highly enough. And a nice sort of visceral, crunchy one for a Friday night as well. So you can see this on Film 4, 9 p.m. on Friday night. It's not going to send you off like whooping and cheering, but you will feel like, oh, yeah. You will feel sort of, righteous about it afterwards. I tell you, it's called A Vigilante, Olivia Wilde, on her own. Absolute reason to see it. Check this one out, Bex. Really, really good.
Well, I do quite like a nice, crunchy movie, so thanks for that one, Van. Welcome back to Offscreen. So what we've got now for you, we've taken you to the cinema, we've kept you on your couch, and now we're going to keep you on the couch, or wherever you want to watch your movies, actually, because we've got your DVD, your Blu-ray, and your streaming offerings for you as well. We've only got one in our bucket for DVD and Blu-ray this week, but Van, I'm hoping you're going to tell me this one's a goodie. It's called Prisoners of the Ghostland. What's the thoughts on this?
Well, it's a Nicolas Cage movie, first and foremost, and this is one of his even more bonkers than usual ones. So, it's at least going to be, so bad it's good. This is the one where he teams up with the Japanese filmmaker and poet Sion Sono, I believe. And it also starred Sofia Boutella. We reviewed this about a month to 6 weeks ago. I think not one of his better ones, but entertaining enough, as you'll hear here. It's all sorts of bonkers.
Each arm is equipped with an explosive device. Your trousers are also equipped with explosives.
Really?
Just beyond the point where we now stand lies a highway where evil reigns.
What is this?
At the end of 5 days, if you have not returned with Bernice, well, I think you get the idea, son. Godspeed.
I mean, I always knew that if I don't recognise it or if I haven't seen it myself, it's probably going to be a Nicolas Cage movie that you've loved and are desperate to put into our DVD and Blu-ray list. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so that's our offering on DVD and Blu-ray. And what we've actually got as well on streaming is a whole list of things that you guys can check out. And the last one, I'm actually really, really excited to watch on this. But let's kick off with, well, actually, this is very timely, isn't it? The first one on our list is Love Actually. Who doesn't love a little bit of Love Actually?
Well, it's that time. It's like an annual tradition now, isn't it? When is Love Actually going to turn up on streaming? And this year, it's of course going to be Tuesday, the 16th of November. And that for a lot of people, that's kind of the time they like to put up their Christmas tree, sort of mid-November. My ex-partner, for instance, we would always have a tradition where we would actually have Love Actually on while we put the Christmas tree up. I then amended that to also include Elf. But Love Actually is available on Netflix from this coming Tuesday. So if you've been waiting all year for your Richard Curtis Christmas romance fix, it's finally here, ladies and gentlemen, and also the same day, and it's a movie I adore. I think you were a fan at the time as well. It is the first live-action offering for the Pokemon universe. It is 2019's Detective Pikachu with Ryan Reynolds and Justice Smith. This is out on the same day, on Tuesday, on Netflix. Were you a fan of this one, Beck?
Yeah, I am, and I think we went to the same screening for this, and I actually was really pleasantly surprised by it. I mean, I often think if Ryan Reynolds is going to be involved in it, we know the kind of humour that we're going to expect from it. But actually, I thought they did the kind of live-action animation combination really, really well. Yeah. And actually, a lot of it was filmed in Canary Wharf in London, or just in and around the city of London, and that was kind of their metropolis that they had there. And I think it looked amazing. The story was compelling enough. I'm surprised there hasn't been a sequel of this at the moment. I thought it was really fun as a watch. I think even if you do like Pokemon, and even if you don't, or if you don't know anything about Pokemon, it didn't really matter watching this. It was a really good, solid, like goes beyond kind of your standard 3-star animation movies. Like, I'm not even going to say the Emoji Movie because that doesn't count, but do you know what I mean? Like, there's movies like Space Jam and stuff or the Space Jam 2 that just isn't hitting the mark. Where movies like this that actually, I think they did well to an extent at the time, but actually should get a lot more accolade than what they did. I think Detective Pikachu was brilliant.
I agree with you. Now, Detective Pikachu, for me, leaned on two things quite heavily, which was Zootopia, or Zootropolis, depending on that, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And I think there is, because of the international appeal of the Pokemon brand as well, there is an entire generation for whom this should arguably play like their personal Who Framed Roger Rabbit. As far as I know, there is a franchise still to come out of this. There were other spin-offs and Pokemon ventures that were being bandied around. Nothing's happened as yet, but I suppose the pandemic's going to have taken a toll out of that. But moving
also,
on...
with animation... Also with animation, though, we've got to take a little bit more time. This isn't just it's not just throwing a load of people together to act something out. There's a lot more that, like, in terms of time, like, I am being impatient with this and kind of saying I want another one now, but actually it probably will take a few years to pull all these animations together. They're very complex in this. I think it's really good.
I agree with you. Going on to one that did take years and years, though. 2 days later, on Amazon Prime, this is on Thursday the 18th, we are getting Dr. Sleep, the long in development sequel to Stephen King's The Shining, brought to the screen by Mike Flanagan. Now, anyone who is as dyed in the wool of the horror community as most of the people I spend my social time around, will tell you Mike Flanagan is kind of the only man in the world that should ever be allowed near Stephen King movies not named Frank Darabont. And this is the sequel to The Shining, starring Ewan McGregor as the now grown-up Danny Torrance, who meets a young girl who also shares his gift of The Shining, the psychic connection he has, but it puts them in the crosshairs of a group of murderers who are sort of psychic vampires who literally feed off of this energy force.
You can hear me.
Let's use our outside voices, all right? You tracked me down?
It was easier than I thought. Like GPS, but in my head.
Look, I don't mean any offense, but this day and age, a grown man sitting with a teenage girl on a park bench.
I'm Aber Stone, and if anyone asks, you're my uncle, Uncle Dan. And that's not even a lie. Not totally. You're magic. Like me.
I don't know about magic.
Do you know what? When this came out, it didn't really do the numbers that everyone was hoping, because it's like the sequel to The Shining, but actually it didn't really perform as we'd hoped. However, having said that, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought Rebecca Ferguson as the leader of that kind of vampiric gang was mesmerizing in this. And most recently, I've just seen her in Dune, and I was like, actually, in this movie, you really see her at her best. And she's quite, she wears this like top hat. It's all quite bohemian and stuff. But it's very strange. And it kind of, that in itself kind of gives you the creeps. But then I thought Ewan McGregor was good as kind of the slightly tormented Danny Torrance, obviously bringing back all that stuff from the past and trying to relive it. And then the recreation of, towards the end of the movie, the hotel
the Overlook,
in the original time. Yeah, I think that is done really well. Like, obviously there's digital effects on it as well. And yeah, I think this has been I think this has missed a trick commercially. This has missed a trick, but actually, I'd say if you haven't seen it yet, it's well worth your time. It's a really, really good follow-up to The Shining.
They've put it on, for my money though, they've put it on Amazon Prime 3 weeks too late, because this would have been an absolute killer at Halloween. This would have been a really good... Imagine having a double bill at Halloween if you could have had The Shining and then Dr. Sleep. That actually should be... I would not be shocked to find out that Prince Charles actually had that on as a double bill or something, because it sounds like something they would do. But you know what? You get to see Dr. Sleep for yourself. I think critics liked it when it came out generally, which is rare. Our peers rarely enjoy actually good movies, as The Eternals has recently proven.
But this is the classic. This is the classic. If the critics like it, the film's going to bomb, right? So.
Classic. Look, this is Blade Runner and Dune again, basically. It's kind of comparable in that way. But one that I suspect critics will heap all over. In fact, I think the embargo's dropped today at the time of recording, so we're starting to hear opinions on this. Next Friday on Netflix, on Friday the 19th, the new film from Lin-Manuel Miranda and John M. Chu. It is Tick, Tick, Boom, starring Andrew Garfield. And this is Andrew Garfield as a sort of fictionalized version of Lin-Manuel Miranda, having a breakdown on the cusp of 30. And did you have Andrew Garfield pegged as someone who can do musicals?
Well, no, but this is really interesting, because you mentioned Lin-Manuel Miranda, but isn't it based on the guy who wrote Rent? And
he's actually the guy. I thought it was Lin-Manuel Miranda.
No. I'm pretty sure it's to do with the guy that wrote Rent. So, he worked in a diner, and he basically had this amazing concept for this musical, and it was going to be groundbreaking, as Rent is. And basically this is that story, so brought to life via Lin-Manuel Miranda. And John M. Chu, we know, also did In the Heights as well, so there's that kind of link. But I think I can imagine that Andrew Garfield would do well in kind of a musical led movie. I think he's a good enough actor to be able to do that, and he just hasn't had the right role for it yet. And this, from what I've seen from the trailer of this, I think it's do you know what? It's not going to set the box office on alight, but it will do well on streaming, I think. And I think if you're in the mood for it and you're in the mood to learn this, I don't know how true to the original story this is of the creation of that particular musical, but it will be interesting to see how this one plays out.
Well, we will get to see that for ourselves next week anyway, because I think we're actually going to try and review this one. I think it has a limited theatrical this next week in certain places, but it's actually coming to streaming on the 19th, which of course will also be the day that we return, and we will be returning with, none other than the Ghostbusters, which I have seen, and I can tell you that any fan service complaints about the 2016 one have been answered. They have absolutely gone and done a Rise of Skywalker on this. But they've done a better job than Rise of Skywalker, admittedly, because I can actually stomach sitting through this. But they have made the Ghostbusters for the Stranger Things Paul Rudd crowd that you absolutely expect they would have. And we'll get to find out for ourselves next week, alongside Tick, Tick, Boom, of course, and other films such as Come On, Come On, which we have familial connections to as well. I think King Richard is out. We won't get to review that, but at least we'll get to have some fun next week.
Yeah, we will. And I'm really looking forward to it. A good selection of movies. It will hopefully push our graph upwards as it kind of went up and down this week. But we'll come back with much more there for your viewing and listening pleasure as well. So for now, I've been Becks Perfect.
I've been Van Connor, and we shall return.